Hey, you asked for it, or maybe you didn't, but it doesn't matter because we're back, baby. Welcome to Turn Bark Time. I'm the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And god dang, we've been here a long time. Bark, how you been, buddy?
Been all right, man. It was like we got the end of the year rolled and we were busy. We were busy with softball, then softball turned to football, back to softball and soccer, and now we're dancing, we're gymnasticking and
Love that.
into basketball.
That's amazing.
So we've
Oh,
been busy, busy, busy.
love that. Yeah, we got done at the end of the year, and I had my first anniversary, which is exciting. We did a little trip to Mount Rainier, and the wife dropped me off at my parents' place and packed up my bag, and I did a 30-day trip through New Zealand, Australia, and Fiji, and just had a freaking phenomenal time. Just incredible countries, incredible people, great group of kids. So it was just a lot of fun. And then football picked it back up, and we're rolling. We're already through first quarter. It's conference week, but we're back, baby. We're back.
What that means is that it's season 5.
Season 5,
Season 5,
episode
episode
1.
1. It started with a dare going into COVID.
Yep. And
Bet you guys couldn't teach us over the YouTube. I don't
yeah,
know how much we're teaching anymore. It's just a great excuse for us to talk to each other.
it really is. And to get together and talk about random topics.
Yeah. So today I'm gonna
You get to
flip
crack
the
it.
script here.
Yep.
This is one of those Mr. Barker passion project topics. My dad was an older my dad was an older dad. He started having kids when he was 30. So by the time he got around to having me, he was probably like darn near on his way to being 40, if not there.
Second. My dad was 42.
And so our topic today is to talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is not a person. It is a lake freighter. It is a boat.
Barker calls it a freighter. I will discuss my terms later of what kind of boat I think it is. Ship, actually, probably.
Yeah. And so for you young whippersnappers, including Mr. Turner, who are not musically inclined in the right ways and educated.
I have been educated. My wife gets 100% of the credit. Miss India Wolfendale was like, "You've never heard this song? You're listening." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am."
So the reason that I know about the Edmund Fitzgerald, this is a two-part why this topic is happening today. First off, the Edmund Fitzgerald was a lake freighter, and the anniversary, it was unfortunately it sank in Lake Superior. I'm going to kind of tell you the end, and we'll start from the beginning.
Yep.
It sank November 10th, 1975. So there was a TikTok or a reel that I saw on Instagram from CookieBot1254. So shout out to CookieBot1254, who was talking about Midwestern culture being at its finest. They were pouring a drink out on the anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I sat there and it hit a chord because there's a Canadian singer named Gordon Lightfoot.
Can we time out and just admire your pun there for a minute? It hit a chord.
Sorry.
He's Gordon Lightfoot plays the guitar in the song, if you don't know.
I think it's a 12-string guitar too.
Anyways,
in 1976, not 1776.
Yep.
So the year after, it was like pretty close to after the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, Gordon Lightfoot wrote a song called "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," and he was motivated to do this because 2 weeks after the wreck, there was an article in Newsweek, and they misspelled the name of the ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's Edmund is spelled with a U.
Right.
So and in Newsweek, they spelled it with an O. And he felt like that was disrespectful to there was 29 sailors on board, and every single one of them perished when the Edmund Fitzgerald sank in Lake Superior. And so he felt a better tribute was needed, and he's a folk musician. And if you don't know what that just means he makes great songs. This is back when folk musicians tell stories with music in the background. Quick side note, Weird Al Yankovic also used this as the inspiration for The Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota.
Oh.
That is where, if you've ever, I listened to it and I was like, dude, this has like the same feel as like the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald was because it was the inspiration for that song.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he was motivated, and like he loved to sail in his off time, and so he felt that there was a better tribute needed. Now, one of the things that I found kind of looking this up, the ironies of this is that there's a lot of historical inaccuracies in the song.
Yes.
But the song was written before all of the facts were known. But I mean, many of them that are in there, um, I guess, could have been better research. But it probably, for when trying to write a song and make things work,
Well, and
you take certain
quickly.
artistic licenses.
Yeah.
Um, and not only did we pass the anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, but last May, Gordon Lightfoot actually passed away. And at the Mariners Church in Detroit, where they rang the bell when they declared like the sailors of the Edmund Fitzgerald lost, they rang it 29 times for each of the sailors. When Gordon Lightfoot passed away, they rang it 29 times and then added one more bell for Gordon Lightfoot. So I mean, it's one of those ones where it's kind of poetic in a way. Um, it's a great song. We probably won't put it on the episode because we'll get a copyright strike, but on the Instagram and wherever I can add music, it's on Instagram. I checked. It's an approved song.
Awesome.
And it's one of those ones that should go down as like one of the great ballads of American folk music, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even though he's Canadian.
But it's written about an American vessel. It's written, from that standpoint. And again, for those people who don't listen to folk, or if you were trying to, I guess if we were trying to encapsulate a folk singer more modern, would we throw out like the Lumineers? Oh, who did I just hear the other day? Obviously, it wasn't that memorable, but something like that, a little bit slower, everything like that. So, but yeah, this is the start of looking into this. So again, I didn't hear the song, but like I said, my wife is the one who filled me in on it. Barker texted today and was like, we really want to look at the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And I was like, absolutely, let's dig in. And so I spent my time digging into it, and it was interesting that I came across the song. I saw that it had been there and it's been recorded, but I didn't listen to it. And my wife forced me to listen to it. Thank you, my wife. I love you very much. It was the right thing to do.
Yeah. So the ship itself launched in '58. So I mean, like it was a long-serving ship. It had set 6 seasonal haul records. It's the largest ship to ever sail on the Great Lakes. And if you didn't know, Lake Superior is the same size as South Carolina. And the Great Lakes, if you add them together, are the same square miles as the United Kingdom. Right? That's a lot of water.
Massive.
And yeah, it's one of the things that people don't understand. And if you've never looked at, I've never gone to the Great Lakes, but I've seen pictures of when the winds are blowing and the ice buildup that occurs on the shores of the Great Lakes is just terrifying to me.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about like inches and feet of ice buildup. So what they did, the Edmund Fitzgerald's job was to take taconite, which is an iron ore from Duluth, Minnesota, which is essentially the furthest western point on Lake Superior, and then sail it across Superior and go through a lock down to Detroit, where it would be turned into steel for probably like cars and such.
Yep.
And it just like Lake Superior, it sinks off of a place called Whitefish Point. And I did research. I looked at Wikipedia, and then I also looked at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum website, which is right off of it's pretty close. It's in Paradise, Michigan, which is pretty close to where the Edmund Fitzgerald sank. Off of Whitefish Point, where 240 vessels are recorded to have sank in that proximity.
Right, and it's not so like and I think the first recorded one is in like the 1800s. I want to say it's like the 1850s.
1816, I think, is what I have written.
1816, and then the Edmund Fitzgerald, like we said, is 75, and everyone's like, oh, but it's like 240 ships have sank in that region in between those two wrecks.
Yeah, and they looked at it. It made 748 round trips which is roughly 1 million miles, which means that if it would have just sailed, it would have circumnavigated the globe 44 times.
For those of you simpletons, that means it went around the world 44 times.
Sorry.
Nope, it's good.
Giving you some SAT words.
Yep, getting smarter.
So yeah, like one of the big things, I guess, there's not much debate about whether it sank. It sank with all hands on board. It had people as young as 20. The captain was 63. Was an experienced captain on Lake Superior. The last communication that was given to another ship that was relatively close to them was, "We're holding our own and going along like an old shoe." And that was at 7:10. It's the last communication that ever happened. And that night they started sailing across Lake Superior. They got a gale warning, which means there's wind. And then the gale warning was eventually upgraded to a winter storm, like a storm warning.
Mm-hmm.
They sailed through the eye of the storm. And it's kind of hard because like nobody truly knows what happened because there's no communication after. He says like the captain was fairly positive and fairly like, upbeat, like didn't. One of the things that some other captains have said in their communications during the day is that he slowed down. And that was something that I think it was the captain of the Arthur M. Anderson. The Edmund Fitzgerald is actually named after the president of Northwestern Mutual Financial or Life Insurance, which is a financial investment company that my wife used to work for when we lived in Pullman and Moscow, which is kind of crazy, but that's who Edmund Fitzgerald is. It's named after a guy who ran a financial company, which Mutual Northwestern is actually probably the old Northwest, i.e. today's Midwest.
Yes, yeah.
But they started sailing, and at one point he does report at like 3 p.m., so like 4 hours before they lose track of the boat, that it was listing. So for those of you who don't understand what that means, it means that it's essentially the boat is leaning to one side, and we talked about the structure of the boat.
Yeah.
Or
so I think so. Basically, one of the we're going to dive into this a little bit more in detail about why it sank. But one of the arguments about why it sank is that it is, like Barker said, it's the largest ship to ever sail on Lake Superior, and it had an impressive track record. However, it when you actually look at the boat and everything like that, it is in my mind, it's a glorified barge, which is one of the more dangerous ships or dangerous seagoing vessels because they are just floating platforms that haul material. And usually pushed by a tugboat. Obviously, this one, like Barker, I think you've said or not said, but it had a crew quarters on, I believe, the front
stern.
Thank you. The stern, and the bow was the pilot house and where they would drive the vessel. The problem with barges is that they don't have the same capability as other ships, including watertight seals or watertight compartments, meaning that if one compartment gets flooded, that it will not flood the other compartments. And so are we going to go into do you want me to go into how it was found, or do we want to wait on that one?
No, we can do that.
Okay, so basically it was found split in two, and it was found split almost pretty even. One side is bigger than the other, but with the bow is found face down, sticking out of the ground, and then the other one is rotated about 50 degrees on its side. But the split comes down the middle, which would have been where the majority of the material that they were hauling oh man, I'm gonna screw it up. Taconite. In the middle, and that was found in between the two pieces of the vessel. And so it's a very impressive ship, and it has a kind of a cool background. Like it was actually really famous for boat watchers. Like people would come out and watch this, and part of the reason they would watch it is because one, it's an impressive vessel, it's very massive, but two was the captain. The captain would actually play music, and then when it would go through locks, he would get on the loudspeaker and he would talk about the boat, and he would tell everybody about it. And so it became a fan favorite. It was like something that when you went to Superior, you looked to see if you got to see the Edmund Fitzgerald. And so one of the things that was, especially when it sank, was it was it was really widely known, this boat, and so everyone's rushing to try and figure out what happened because this boat is so famous. They even called it like the DJ Captain, which I thought was pretty funny, like because they would have used that, radio term. So
Yeah, when it was called like the Fitz. It was one of the other nicknames for the boat was the Pride of the American Side,
oh yeah,
because it sailed on the American side of Lake Superior.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I looked at it. I think there was like three pretty decent theories. One is the cargo hold wasn't watertight and it took
Yep.
on water. The other one is that so like this storm was really severe, and again with the Great Lakes being so large, when the wind blows in from the northwest, like down from Canada, um, it has so much lake to build, like a little bit of wind builds up as it crosses over the lake. And they thought about one of the other theories is that there was a rogue wave, and there was a report, I think, from the Arthur M. Anderson, that they got hit by like what they call three sisters.
Mhm.
So three rogue waves that were about 30 feet. So it's like a 3-story building, like
Yep.
smashing into the side of the boat, which they postulate if it hit, depending on how it hit, it could have completely submerged either the stern or the bow of the boat
Mhm.
had it been caught at the right time. And again, it's kind of built like a really long like U. Like there's the pilot house on one end and the crew quarters on the other. So if you sink one end and you lose buoyancy, all of a sudden it puts a lot of stress in the middle of the vessel.
Which isn't reinforced or anything like that because it's meant to just haul the cargo in the middle.
Yeah, and then the other theory is that it could have struck a shoal, which is essentially kind of like a reef in the lake that at the time was not. They didn't have a depth finder, so like the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, tragic as it is, and like 29 people, it's a famous sinking, and it's not like it's not like the Titanic or like the Sultana, which is the riverboat that kills like over 1,000 people when like one of the boilers burst in the Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's 29 people, but they think that it might have struck the shoal because they didn't have a depth finder to tell they had two different radars. The radars went out. He was actually like getting help from the Arthur Anderson to like figure out what his positioning was. So they're not sure if he hit this shoal because they didn't have a depth finder. And after that, they required ships on Lake Superior. Like they required ships to start carrying depth finders. They also started to require ships to carry like cold water, like life support or cold water suits, survival suits. Thank you. If you've ever watched like Deadliest Catch, you see the big orange suits. And then the third one is the Coast Guard upped their resources that they had available because the Arthur M. Anderson first reports to Sault Ste. Marie, the station at Sault Ste. Marie, that they think the Edmund Fitzgerald is in trouble because they haven't heard from them in like 20 minutes at 7:39. 8:25, they call and they say, "Hey, we still can't find her." And then at 9:03, they finally say, "Hey, it's missing."
Yeah.
And then there's a 3-day search, and like they eventually, like the same night, they eventually do scramble some fixed wing aircraft and some helicopters to come in with like 3.8, like what was it, like candle
power. Yep, 3.8 million candle power.
Yeah, like some pretty severe, like, but I mean, again, it's a piece of water that's the size of South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I mean, it makes me think of Deepwater Horizon, like this summer, where there was a tragedy and like you're looking for a really small vessel, relatively speaking, in the ocean and trying to find evidence of it. And so a number of researchers have dove, including the son of Jacques Cousteau, down to see the wreckage of the Edmund Fitzgerald and trying to piece together what happens. It looks like one of the lifeboats was found on the surface, but it looks like it like pulled away from like the mooring or whatnot, of like how it was connected to the boat. So that doesn't seem like they were ready to abandon ship.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually led to Gordon Lightfoot, as he performed the song later in his life, he actually changed one of the verses. Because in the original rendition of the song, he says, at 7 p.m., like one of the hatches gave in, and the cook turned to the crew and said, "Boys, it's too rough to feed you." And it's like that doesn't jive with any of the reports that are coming in.
Right.
Like the captain had said they were taking on some water at one point and they had their bilges going, but they weren't in trouble, like
Nope.
terribly in trouble. Um, and so like, out of respect for these families, like he went through and changed the way that he performed the song up until his death.
Yeah.
In 1995, they dove down and they recovered the bell off the ship.
Hmm.
So it's not the front off the pilot house. And it actually, again, is at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum. And it was kind of one of these things that there for a while it kind of moved around. And then the family said, hey, this isn't like a traveling trophy. Like this is a memorial. And like because of the popularity of Edmund Fitzgerald and the song, like people wanted to come see this bell because it's a very famous ship. And then like the families are like, well, no, that's not the right function of what we're trying to do here. Like you're taking essentially like you robbed a grave and now you're making it into an economic opportunity, which is what a huge criticism of a lot of people who dive on the Titanic and try and take stuff off the Titanic.
Yep. Absolutely.
Is that think about Pearl Harbor as well, like the USS Arizona, that their bodies are still encapsulated in there, and it's like
You
this
don't
is
out there. Nope.
it's a graveyard. Like you should treat it as such.
Exactly.
So for me, this was the song. Like I have pretty old musical taste. And so like this is like one of the things that like one of the songs that I love to play like while kids are working in my classroom, and then they always like sit there and they go like, what is it about? And it's 6 minutes long.
Mhm.
So like it's really hard to ask a modern kid to listen to a 6 minute song and like pay attention the entire time. But the other thing that it always got me is that he talks about it's the big lake called Gitchagumi, and that's actually an Ojibwe word for Lake Superior called it either translates to big sea or huge water.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And there's just kind of this idea that like the Great Lakes have always been there, and like even with like
Yeah.
Native Americans, First Nation, or Amerindian populations, like this is again the only lake that's larger. We were talking about this earlier. The largest lake in the world is actually called a sea because it's so big and it's got salted water in it, and that's the Caspian Sea. And I think, oh gosh, what war is it? I want to say it's the French and Indian War. People don't, it's either French and Indian War, maybe it's the War of 1812. People don't understand that, like, on the Great Lakes, like, there have been, like,
Well, the sea battle.
yeah, in the
Yep.
War of 1812, like, that, the Great Lakes is home to, like, a sea campaign that is worthy,
Of
you
any
know,
campaign or any
yeah, like,
armada. Yeah.
it makes it like a two theater war. There's the Great Lakes campaign, and then there's like the Atlantic seaboard,
Yeah.
right? And that's why the St. Lawrence is so big, and like that's why Fort Ticonderoga is important because
Yeah.
it
And they're building
protects the
those.
Hudson.
Obviously, if you look at like Superior and you look at Michigan and things like that, like they're at the time, you're not going to bring a vessel down through there. There's not a lock system or anything like that. Like they're building the ships on the lake and they're building battleships. They're building ships to shoot at each other. It's not, just hauling. But that's how important the Great Lakes region is to the country and Canada as well. So, um, but looking at this, like it was very interesting to see like what has become of it. Like I said, I hadn't heard of the song and anything like that, and now it's kind of like something like I've heard it and I've listened to it a couple times, and I'm just like, this is right up, the alley of like you said, it's a cool piece of historical folk. It reminds me a lot of like, and it kind of Gordon Lightfoot falls into that era, but a lot of those Vietnam songs, those folk Vietnam songs about the war and things like that, or being at home while it's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm an old soul, and like that's one of the things that I enjoy about music. I enjoy when music tells a story, and you can tell what the words mean, and then you can go back and without somebody having to print out the lyrics
Yeah.
and say what the words are. Um, I just really enjoy when it tells the story, and like this was one where I just kind of I caught that reel about like it was Veterans Day, but like the day before Veterans Day is
Yeah.
the anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitz or the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Um, and it's just kind of like this iconic piece of like Americana written by a Canadian, which is, I guess, fitting because that happens a lot. But, you know, I mean, it's just one of those things, like, as you guys, like, everything has a history. And so, like, I think it's really cool. One of my favorite bands that I try and push on kids is Sabaton, which is a Swedish heavy metal band that
We've
has
covered
everything that's referenced.
their songs.
Huh?
We've talked about one of their songs.
Yeah, we talked about when the Winged Hussars arrived, talking about the Battle of Venice, or the Siege of Vienna. Sorry, not Venice, Vienna.
I was going to get you for that.
But again, I guess as we're kind of wrapping this up, one of the things that I would ask, you know, of our tens of followers.
Yes.
I know there's 277 at the time of this episode, so maybe the numbers kick up to 300. That'll be the goal for the season. If you guys have something you want us to talk about, we're always willing to
yes, please
appeal to the masses.
We really are. And what we love about this show, I would say, sorry to interrupt you, Bark. Go ahead. Oh, okay. So one of the things I love about this show is that I get to learn new things, right? Like that's part of one of my favorite things about this show is like, I looked back, I was telling kids in classes that we have a podcast and that we get to start recording tonight. And they're like, you have a podcast? And I was like, yeah. And I have our license plate that you got me hung up with our logo. But I said, they go, what do you guys talk about? And I was like, history stuff. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, my favorite episode, or one of my favorite episodes we ever done was the history of toilet paper. And it was hysterical, like just to learn about, because like it's just a modern commodity that you don't think of. And you don't think it has a history behind it. And it does. So I second the motion, Barker. If you guys have something, you want to know the history of something, anything, you know, we'll dive in. We're excited. So we're back, baby. We're back, baby.
I was talking with my sixth period this year, and I was having a moment. I was feeling it. I was cooking, and I looked at him and I said, because history gets a bad rap in school because everybody thinks it's boring.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a list of dates and dead people, and it's not. It's bigger than that. And like one of the things that like good history teachers do is they let you ask questions. And so I put it in its pretty elementary terms. I said, don't crush your wonder bugs.
Ooh, I like that.
So like you always have these kids that are like, oh, I wonder about like why is blah. I wonder, that's your wonder bug. And in a lot of other classes that have like a standardized test and whatnot, that's always bearing down. You get crushed because we're like, well, we gotta do this. We gotta keep up with the pacing guide. And I told my kids, and I go, look, this is a world history class. And I go, if you have a wonder bug and there's something you guys want to talk about, let me know and we can kind of work it in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, please don't crush your wonder bugs.
Mark, can I make a request?
Yeah.
Can I get a sticker or a t-shirt with that on it? Can we maybe fire up the old Canva, bring back our store and I mean,
the store's still there.
No, I know, but I mean, like, can we? Because I would love. I think I would rock that T-shirt.
Don't crush your wonder bugs.
Yeah, like I would wear that. Oh man, I love that. So,
writing it down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the beauty of it. Like if our students are watching, if any of our students are watching, or former students are watching, one of our favorite things to do is that all of our kids think that they have the ability to get us off topic, and you don't. We make the choice whether or not we're going to go off topic, but one of the ways to make us stop and just get to have discussions with you, that's the best part of learning. And that's our favorite part is when you guys bring it, right? Barker was telling me a story, and he has it in his classroom, his big I for inquiry, right? And he's pointing, that's what this is. Like, ask us the questions or ask yourself the questions, and then maybe have a couple of crazy history teachers tell you about it. So.
And maybe someday you'll be motivated when you're an old fuddy-duddy like us, and you'll go out and look stuff up on your own.
Yep.
I love it when kids are like, hey, Mr. Barker, have you ever heard about this? And then I go, sometimes, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then there's other times where I'm like, no, I'm not aware of that.
Nope.
Because there are many rabbit holes in the world. Not enough Dotsons.
I love that. All right. I think that's a good way to end.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Until next time, I'm the Turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we're going to be here a long time. Have a good night, everybody.
Be safe.
And by golly, you just be well. Welcome back, everybody.